Good morning, I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. Hurricane Laura making landfall late last night, about 1 a.m. near Cameron, in Cameron Parish, Louisiana, south of Lake Charles. A wind gust in Lake Charles, 133.5 miles an hour. They took the eye wall and the eye and then the backside, and now we're getting kind of second helpings here. We're getting just as to the edge of what was a major hurricane, a Cat 4 landfall. We're about 150 miles inland here in Alexandria, and we've had gusts over 85 miles an hour, and the rain is just torrential. That's why we have the flash flood warning continuing, along with the flash flood watch into early this evening. We've had over 4 inches of rain so far. Last hour I mentioned 1.71 inches of rain, so that's a pretty hefty total. 2 inches an hour, that's tropical. And also these wind gusts still continuing 50 to 55 miles an hour. Power outages continue to mount in the state of Louisiana, and that is going to be the number one impact once we get past the rainfall today for areas away from the coast that didn't deal with that storm surge. We're still waiting to find out how much surge we had. Predicted values were 10 to 20 feet. So far, so good. We haven't had the water rise in Lake Charles that was anticipated, but we're not done with the water coming up just yet. So Kelly Cass, it's a wild morning up here in central Louisiana as what's left of Laura, still a hurricane, heads towards into Leesville and then right up into Natchitoches and then into Shreveport and Little Rock this afternoon. I'm going to check in with Jen Carfagno at 7 a.m. Eastern, coming up shortly from Shreveport.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rare day for Shreveport, right, to be under a hurricane warning. Mike, thanks so much.
Good morning. It's meteorologist Mike Seidel here in Alexandria, Louisiana. If you went to bed overnight, you missed the landfall of Hurricane Laura. Jim Cantori, Stephanie Abrams taking the eye wall, the backside. Wind gust in Lake Charles, 133.5 miles an hour. We've done about half that strong here, 85 here in Alexandria. But keep in mind, we're about 150 miles from the coast. And look on the radar. You can see where the center is. And the eye wall now has come through Leesville. DeRitter's gusted over 80. Leesville just checking, they've gusted to about 70 miles an hour. And we also have a tornado watch over just about this whole area until 8. They'll likely extend that, the Storm Prediction Center. Numerous flash flood warnings. We've now had over 4 inches of rain here in about 2.5 hours. That gives you an idea, maybe 3 hours. That gives you an idea of how hard it's been raining along with the wind blowing. Our most recent gust here, 55 miles an hour. We'll probably gust higher again because we've got some of those bands closer to what's left of the eye wall, the core of Lauren, coming at us as Lauren continues to move north. Next stop, Shreveport, Natchitoches, and then up towards Little Rock. This afternoon, we'll have Jen Carfagno joining us here, coming up in just a few minutes at 7 a.m. Eastern. Let's go back to Kelly Cass in Atlanta. Kelly, you're nice and dry there, but the rain continues to add up here. That's one of the issues inland, not the surge, but the heavy rain, the localized flooding. That'll diminish later today, but the power outages are mounting. Last check, almost 350,000 customers in Louisiana have lost power. We're hoping it's not like Rita. Some customers had no power for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that could very well.
2005. Let's hope it's much shorter this time.
Hopefully, Mike, but that could very well be the case, at least several days, depending on the structural damage that we see with Laura, of course.
Up the road a bit to Alexandria, Louisiana, and that is where we find one Mike Seidel, who is on the eastern side of Laura. Mike.
Hey, good morning there, Tevin, in Lake Charles, where you really got hammered. Up here, we've had gusts to 85. Past 30 minutes, we've gusted in the mid-60s, and we're a long way from being over. On the radar, you can see we're getting a bit of a break in the rainfall intensity, but we've got more bands coming in. They're rotating around again. Low pressure, a hurricane in the northern hemisphere. The winds rotate counterclockwise, so we've got more rain coming in. We've already had about 4 inches of rain, and in the past 2 hours we've had about 2.25, or 2.5 inches of rain. So it's really come down along with the strong winds. Power went out briefly about a half an hour or so ago, came back on in a few minutes. Always good to see that. Let's hope it stays on. But I can tell you yesterday, driving from Nacogdoches, Texas, across the Sabine River over here, I saw power crews everywhere. At the hotel here, we had big tanker trucks with gasoline. So everybody was staging, and they'll get in there. But remember, power crews cannot get back up on their bucket trucks until the winds die down. That's not going to be until probably, well, sometime this evening and overnight. In the meantime, more rain. A flood watch continues, flash flood watch, a tornado watch at least until 8 o'clock. Fortunately, recently, we haven't had any tornado warnings. This is all heading north. We've got Shreveport in the crosshairs, and we've got Jen Carfagno in Shreveport. Good morning, Jen, as it gets ready to ramp up where you are this morning as Laura heads in your direction.
Seeing significant impact from Laura, and that's where we find Mike Seidel. And Mike, can you take me through what has changed, or how has the wind certainly started to pick up more since you woke up this morning?
Hey, Tevin, this is about as rough as it's been all morning. We've been gusting probably close to 70 miles an hour coming right down the highway here. Just horizontal blinding rainfall. And it's about, whoa, did you hear that? Like a gunshot? Probably some kind of power issue down the road. That's the second time we've heard that, which sounds like just a gunshot in the woods. So these winds just howling here in Alexandria. I haven't looked at the radar in the past few minutes. This may be actually part of what's left of the outer eye wall. It's scraping us on the west side, rather on the east side of Laura. Now the center is moving up to our west, and we're about 35 or 40 miles away. So that's probably what's just come through here in the past 8 to 10 minutes, just rocking everything here in Alexandria. Power is still on where we are. Across the street, it looks like it's out, and some of the highway lights are on. Some of them are out. Looking down the road, it's very, very dark, and just very rough morning. We had expected this, the worst of it to hit here before sunrise. We had a gust earlier at 85 miles an hour. About a half an hour ago, we had a gust to 74 miles an hour. And to get a sense of how strong this gust is right here, probably pushing 50, at least 50 miles an hour with a stinging rain, 4 inches and counting. Still the flash flood watch and the tornado watch. We'll see if they extend that. But right now, we're getting consistently the strongest wind gust from Laura here in central parts of Louisiana. Again, the worst of it now heading into Natchitoches and up towards Shreveport. Now, Shreveport, you're going to be on the side. That doesn't mean it's going to be any less, except the farther you go away from the coast, like up towards Little Rock, the storm will gradually wind down and weaken. So we're not expecting, 80 or 90 mile an hour wind gusts as far north as Little Rock. But it's going to be quite a morning here. Another 2 more hours or so of rainfall, then the rain's going to shut down, and the winds will gradually subside through the afternoon. We got to get these winds down to get the power back on, because they can't go up in their bucket trucks with winds, more than about 15 or 20 miles an hour. So the power crews are staged all over the area, all over the state, and they're just waiting for the winds to subside to get back out, and certainly to get trees off the power lines and the poles and get everything back up and running. So Kelly, quite about a 15-minute window here where we have just gotten rocked here in Alexandria.
I mean, first it was the rain bands, Mike, but it looks like that eastern eye wall is kind of closing in on you right now as Laura is moving just off to your west.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I looked at the radar, and I thought we would get scraped. We were just close enough that we would get scraped by it, and that's what's going on right now. So I'll check the latest observations out at the airport and see how much that gust was that you saw on air. And about 40 minutes ago, we gusted to 74, which was our second highest gust below the 85 this morning. The 85 was between about 5 and about 4:30 and 5 here in Alexandria. There's another pretty strong gust. And the other thing about it is the rainfall is coming in horizontally, and it just stings as it comes into your face. Not raining particularly hard right now. It's more about the wind at this point. And there it goes.
Yeah, Mike, we have,
outdoors you don't get that whistling and the roaring sound so much unless it's blowing harder. There's another pretty good gust coming. There we go. Coming right down the highway. Whoa. don't know what the hell that was. A big drink cup that just came blowing by me and hit me. Something else I noticed, Kelly, is there is nobody out on the road this morning. Just saw emergency vehicle go by, but that's a good thing. Everybody is staying home. Signs on restaurants last night and businesses saying we're closed tomorrow because of Hurricane Laura, and that's the best way to take this is to stay home and stay put until this afternoon when the winds die down and we get back to something a little bit more easy to take outside. Kelly?
Mike, stay safe. We do have a look at some of the currents of the wind that you're experiencing right there in Alexandria, Louisiana. And
good morning. Welcome back here to Alexandria, Louisiana. Let's take you here live. We're looking at KTLC's tower, TV tower. That's the CBS affiliate in Lake Charles. And as you can see, it's been taken out, at least part of it's been taken out by Hurricane Laura. It came through Lake Charles early this morning after midnight. They took the both eye walls, both sides. They got in the eye. Winds gusted to 134 miles an hour. Sustained winds almost 100 miles an hour. So just a real rough night there. The only saving grace so far is the surge has not been as high as predicted. Down at the coast in Cameron, they measured about 11 feet. We're expecting as high as 20 feet. That's still going to put a big dent in Holly Beach, but certainly half the number we expected. We'll see how it all ends up in the Lake Charles area. Back here in Alexandria, a wild morning. In fact, the past half an hour, we've gotten kind of in the far eastern edge of what's left of the eye wall. We've gusted again over 80 miles an hour. We had an 85 earlier, and we've had several gusts to hurricane force or higher. So it's been certainly a wild morning. We're closing on 400,000 customers without power in the state of Louisiana. They extended the flash flood watch, rather the flash flood warning here in this part of Louisiana for about another hour and a half with good reason, because we're still getting locally heavy rain. And right now we've added up just over 4 1/3 inches of rain from the hurricane, and that was expected. We were expecting 6 to 12 inches in this area of Louisiana. There's another strong gust. I don't know if you can see across the road. I mean, trees are just wailing in the wind, these gusts that are up over hurricane force through the past hour or so. Down in Lake Charles, things are drying out and the winds are beginning to back off. It's an onshore flow, so we're going to keep an eye on that surge from the west and southwest. And again, all this is lifting north, and by this afternoon, even here in the central part of the state, we're going to see some sunshine and mixed clouds. The winds are going to take a while to die down. We're going to lose the strongest winds. Boy, there's another. Look at that gust. Look at that gust coming through here. You can literally hear the roar coming down the road, the highway, and then it comes right through where you're standing. So again, we've got a ways to go in this part of the state up to Natchitoches. It's on the way to Shreveport, and then eventually this afternoon in Little Rock. Let's go to Tevin Wooten. He's been up most of the night, and he's been with us this morning in Lake Charles. What do you have for us right now, Tevin? Good morning. This is meteorologist Mike Seidel. Welcome back to Alexandria, Louisiana. We're about 150 miles inland, and you can see what kind of hit we're taking from Hurricane Laura this morning. Wind gusts, several wind gusts over 80 miles an hour. 92% of Rapides Parish, that's the home parish of Alexandria. 92% of the parish now without power. Over almost 500,000 customers without power between Texas and Louisiana. That's southeast Texas, and also a good deal of southern and south central and southwestern Louisiana. Laura is moving north at about 15 miles an hour, and on the radar you can see the center now. It's now just almost to our due east, but we've gotten the fringe effects of the outer eye wall on the east side, and that's why we've had these more than a few hurricane force wind gusts, and that's not been knocking out the power around the area. I don't see, just as far as I can see, I don't see any structural damage. I'm sure there's been some. We've been seeing trees across the road just wailing behind me. I don't know if Mark Weiss can get in on those, but look at how the wind is just rolling right up the roadway. There's nothing to stop it. And pretty much exposed right out there. Where we are, we have a little bit more protection, and certainly for our crew and our camera. Rainfall now 4 1/3 inches. Flash flood warning continues across many areas of southern and central Louisiana. Here comes another gust. You can actually kind of hear them rolling up the highway, and then they come right through. And then they come right through here. So what's going to happen? It's going to continue to move north, the worst of the weather, into, well, Natchitoches right now, into the Shreveport area. Jen Carfagna will check back with her in just a minute. Boy, this is a pretty hefty gust once again. And then it goes into the state of Arkansas, including Little Rock. And we've got, I think, Chris Warren and Felicia Combs will be live up there starting early this afternoon. So we've got you covered right on through today and tonight. And eventually, this is going to take a right turn and head over towards D.C., Baltimore, and Philadelphia over the weekend. So stay tuned for what could happen once it hits the East Coast. In the meantime, it's going to be a rough day from here north and then into Arkansas. From here south, we've already seen the rain has backed off Kelly and Lake Charles, and the winds will gradually subside as the storm pulls away and slowly weakens. Kelly?
All right, Mike, thanks so much. Storm surge flooding, though, still happening in Lake Charles, even though they want to go back out live to the field now. And Mike Seidel joining us. You just had a wind there of 86 miles per hour in Alexandria, Louisiana, Mike.
Well, that's the peak gust so far. It feels every bit of that out here, especially if you get out on the roadway, and we're getting a little protection from the building, the business next door. But I mean, we have been rocketed here by these gusty winds over hurricane force for about 45 minutes now, and you can see on the radar why we're getting the eastern fringe of what's left of the the outer eye wall of Hurricane Laura, which made landfall this morning, and now it's been moving north steadily through Lake Charles. They gusted to 134. We've had gusts into the 80s at DeRidder where they got the eye, but now the eye is going to fill in as the storm weakens, as it heads up towards the Shreveport area and eventually into Arkansas. We've got crews coming up in Little Rock this afternoon to keep you updated as the storm, as the hurricane, or maybe by then, it'll probably still be a hurricane at least through the early part of the afternoon. Then it goes down to a tropical storm. We've had over almost 4.5 inches of rain here. From here on out, we're going to see the rainfall diminish, but we're going to see the winds continue to gust for a while. They'll wind down this afternoon, slowly relax as Laura pulls away and the circulation winds down, and the overall storm itself, the hurricane, weakens. Let's go down to Lake Charles, Louisiana, where they got hit pretty hard overnight. Tevin Wooten, I know you were probably up most of the night. What can you tell us this morning, what you see as far as the surge and the damage within, at least within eyesight of where you're standing?
All right, let's go back out to Mike Seidel. And Mike, how have things changed, or have they, since now we've seen the circulation move well north of you?
The one thing that's changed is the rainfall has really backed off. We've now added up just over 5 inches of rain here. Most of that's falling in about 3.5 hours. The ferocity of the rain and the winds gusting over 80 miles an hour. We've got more coverage. This is all continuing to head north towards Jen and towards Little Rock. Stay with us for more coverage. Welcome back to the Weather Channel. Good morning from Alexandria, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. Quick recap. Laura made landfall late last night, early hours of this morning in Cameron, Louisiana, as a Category 4 hurricane. It rocked and rolled north through Lake Charles. They gusted to 134 miles an hour, and now it's affecting central Louisiana. We've had gusts here over 86 miles an hour, 5 inches of rain. 93% of this parish repeats parish without power. 460,000 customers and counting without power in Louisiana, and the winds are still howling through this part of the state. Because it came in as such a strong hurricane, it takes a while for it to wind down. We're not talking about a landfall in Cat 1 and you go 100 miles or so inland. We're 125 miles inland, and we're getting wind gusts almost to 90 miles an hour. Now, gradually, the wind field will relax, but it's all going to be heading north. Let me show you what it looked like about an hour ago, and this is when the airport was clocking wind gusts in the low 80s miles per hour. And you can just, I think we'll just listen to the wind, to turn up the audio here, and listen to this wind as it blew through the streets. Yeah, pretty loud, and I can imagine what it sounds like in some of these buildings, because as it comes around these buildings here outside, you can hear the roar and the whine of the wind through this area here in Alexandria. So what's next? Here, the rain is winding down. That's not going to be a major issue in the next couple of hours, although a lot of the state's still under flash flood warnings. And in this part of the state, and then over in parts of the state of Mississippi, we have a tornado watch till 4 p.m. That is always a possibility when we have a landfalling tropical system. Fortunately, unlike with Isaias, we haven't had certainly the number of reported tornadoes by far. But I want you to look up. Mark Weiss is going to pan up to the sky, and this cloud base, this stratospheric, is not very high, but look how fast these clouds are moving. You're talking about wind sustained up there 50, 60 miles an hour, and it's, whoa, that was now that was a gust probably over 60 miles an hour. You can see how fast the clouds are rolling overhead. You almost feel like you can reach out and catch them or touch them, but they're really wrapping around the center. And the center now heading up, what's left of it, up to the west side, rather to the east side of Shreveport. We've got Jen Carfagno there. In the meantime, let's time it out for you. Let's go back to the studio. Alex Wallace, it's not over till it's over. In fact, this one may end up likely impacting folks on the beaches of Maryland and Delaware by the weekend. But first things first, let's talk about today.
Yeah, you said it, no doubt, Mike, a long bit of history to go when it comes to this system.
And where Laura goes during the afternoon hours today. I'm going to send it back over to Seidel in Alexandria, Louisiana.
Hey, Dr. Postel, the wind still rather sporty out here. Not getting the extreme gusts we were for the past couple of hours when we got the what was left of the eastern eye wall, and that is now headed up north and east of Natchitoches and heading towards Monroe. So look out at Monroe for those gusts, as Dr. Postel just mentioned, over hurricane force. We've got a little traffic out on the highway. Let's walk out here, and I've been doing some eyeballing, billboards, things like that. Signs, and just taking a view of this. I don't see any substantial damage, but I'm sure there's some structural damage out there, at least some minor structural damage. And the power, 93% of customers in Rapides Parish without power.
Been dealing with the winds that have been pretty gusty at times, Mike.
And right on cue, we got a pretty nifty gust here of over 50 miles an hour. Out here on the highway. There are some cars now out here. Earlier this morning, nobody was out. Everything pretty much decided to shut down today because of the impending hurricane, and that's with good reason. Now, later on this afternoon, the sun is going to come back out, and the winds will slowly subside. But you can see across the road here how much wind we still have blowing those trees. Haven't seen any come down here, but we've gotten reports of trees down in the area, and that doesn't surprise me when you have over 90% of the power customers in this parish, Rapides Parish, here in Alexandria, this area, without power. There's trees down. That's just not from poles getting blown down. That's mostly from trees down. But right here, we don't see any trees down. But with 86-mile-an-hour wind gust and a wet ground, we've had 5 inches of rain. That is the perfect prescription for knocking down trees. I want to show you some of the video from earlier. This is from about an hour and a half or so ago when we kind of got the remnant, what was left of the eastern eye wall, and we were getting consistent gusts, 60, 70, over hurricane force. We got a couple at this point of 81 miles an hour. You can just hear the wind howling down the road. Just incredible pictures from what is a hurricane, and we're so far inland. We're 125 miles as the crow flies to the Gulf of Mexico. So you've got to have a pretty potent storm and one that's moving at a good rate for it to hold on to its wind and power this far inland. And it's still blowing pretty good north of us, where we still have the core of the heaviest rain and the strongest winds, and that's going to go up in Arkansas. And eventually the storm's going to take a right in the next day or so. Let's go back to Atlanta, and I'm tossing to Alex. Or Dr. Postel?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's go to Dr. Postel, because Dr. Postel has obviously a lot more to talk about. There's so many interesting facets about this hurricane. And one thing I remember, it was like 10 or 12 days ago, out in the Atlantic, the Eastern Atlantic, and it was struggling. Remember that, Dr. Postel? It was struggling, and we were wondering if it was ever going to become a depression or a storm, and it finally became a storm, and it still struggled. But boy, it persevered, and once it got, even with Hispaniola and the Cuban mountains, once it got into the Gulf of Mexico, it just went gangbusters. And the day before.
Yes, this is another iteration in a recent line of hurricanes in the northern Gulf of Mexico and in western Gulf of Mexico, too, that have strengthened all the way up to landfall. Alexandria, you guys had winds over 80 miles per hour, Mike, in the region, and it looks like conditions have improved considerably since then.
Yeah, just in the past hour, you can feel a definite slackening off the wind. The rain has stopped. Skies are brightening up. We're going to have some sunshine. But we've got both of the impacts in this neighborhood. We've got the flash flooding here. These streets all underwater around this area here off Wendover Boulevard. Some of it's about 1.5 to 2 feet deep. You also see limbs down. Now, we didn't see any big trees down on our way here. It's about a 2.5 mile drive. But you can see littered across the landscape, limbs. Some of these are going to have to be, small chainsaw and hauled out. We've got more tree damage over here. So we're seeing a lot of minimal tree damage. Don't see any big limbs on houses, which is fortunate. And also you see this, the high water mark. So the water is coming down. Things are looking better and better. But still, 95% of this parish is without power, and over, 540,000 customers without power in the state of Louisiana. So a lot of issues still to be dealt with. That is to get the power back on. And we're generally hearing for some folks it's going to be 7 to 10 days.